Hello and welcome to the Nevada Office of the Attorney General's pre-application webinar for the Services Training Officers Prosecutors, also known as STOP, and the Sexual Assault Services Program, also known as SASP grant funding opportunity. Presenting is Megan Nelson, one of our grants and projects analysts here at the Attorney General's office. Before we get started, I just want to read you this attribution statement. This webinar was supported by grant number 15 JOVW-24-GG-00519-STOP and the 15 JOVW-24-GG-00561-SASP awarded by the OVW, U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this workshop are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Justice. Please remember that if you are funded through these funds, that all materials created must clearly be labeled with this attribution statement above. So just a quick overview of what this presentation will go over. The first thing we are going to discuss is eligibility. Then we will cover the purpose areas for both STOP and then SASP, as well as the state priorities. We will discuss the distributions of funds for STOP, the application process, as well as go over the contents of the application packet, reminders of the deadline for applications to be submitted to our office, a timeline of what will occur after applications are received with the review process and when people can expect to be notified, as well as expectations for those funded and contact information for our unit. To be eligible to apply for this funding opportunity, your agency must have an active SAM registration where you will provide the unique entity identifier and expiration date associated with that registration, be a nonprofit organization or a governmental agency, tribal or non-tribal, must register as a vendor with the State of Nevada Controller's Office at the following link. Additionally, only agencies eligible for SASP funds are nonprofits providing sexual assault services. You do not need to indicate whether you are applying for STOP or SASP. Our office will make those determinations based on the contents of your application and eligibility. So let's go over the federal purpose areas for the STOP grant. In order to receive funds, your proposed activities must fit in within these federal purpose areas. They are training law enforcement, judges, prosecutors, and other court personnel, develop, train, or expand personnel, develop and implement more effective policies, develop, improve, or expand data collection and communication, develop, increase, or strengthen victim services and legal assistance, develop, increase, or strengthen programs of Indian tribes, support multidisciplinary efforts, train sexual assault forensic medical examiners, develop, increase, or strengthen programs to elder and victims with disabilities, provide victim immigration assistance, maintain core services while increasing new services, support placement of Jessica Gonzalez victim assistance, provide Crystal Judson domestic violence protocol programs, develop and promote legislation and policies that promote victim services, develop, implement, or enhance SARTs, also known as Sexual Assault Response Teams, or CCRs, known as Coordinated Community Response Teams. Develop and strengthen policies relating to investigation and prosecution. Develop, increase, or strengthen programs addressing sexual assault in correctional settings. Identify and conduct a backlog inventory of sexual assault kits. Develop, increase, or strengthen services for LGBTQIA+ victims and survivors. Develop, increase, or strengthen services for female genital mutilation. Develop, increase, or strengthen evidence collection methods. Provide victim advocates and local governmental agencies to provide services. pay fees for victims' birth certificates, passports, or identification cards, and develop, increase, or strengthen culturally specific services. For agencies eligible to SASP funding, your proposal must include at least one of the following purpose areas. For those who are not eligible for SASP, please do not include any of these on your application. Those areas are 24-hour hotline services providing crisis intervention services and referral, accompaniment and advocacy through medical, criminal justice, and social support systems, crisis intervention, short-term individual and group support services, and comprehensive service coordination and supervision, information and referral to assist the sexual assault victim and family or household members, community-based culturally specific services and support mechanisms, including outreach activities for the underserved communities, development and distribution of materials on issues related to the services described above. In addition to the federal purpose areas, please identify any one of the following, well, more than one, any of the following state priority areas your proposal covers. These include improved access to sexual assault forensic exams, services for underserved victims, and improved investigation and prosecution of sexual assault crimes, improved understanding of and response to human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking, improving intake procedures and service collaborations to increase victims' access and better identify victim priorities, improve statewide, regional, and local utilization of resources and programs, continue the support of intimate partner violence fatality reviews and policy development, and support development of dual domestic violence sexual assault programming in rural communities. Other priorities noted in the application include provision of trauma-informed care services and provision of healing-centered engagement. As a reminder, although prevention is an allowed activity under STOP, funding is usually not adequate to fund prevention activities. So now let's discuss the breakdown of the distribution of funds for STOP. We must distribute funding between categories in the following ways: 25% to law enforcement agencies, 25% to prosecution, 30% to direct victim services, 5% to court projects, and then we have 15% discretionary. Now let's talk about the application process. First, review the full notice of funding opportunity and familiarize yourself with it before starting your application. Next, you will complete the application narrative along with the attachments. Please be sure to sign all documents that have a signature line, and remember the front page must have 3 signatures from 2 to 3 different people as identified on that page. If any of those signatures are missing, your application may not be considered for funding, so please don't miss this step. Ensure all sections of the application packet are in the same order as the application content checklist found on page 38 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. You will then email a final copy of your completed application packet to aggrants@ag.nv.gov by no later than October 17th, 2025, 5 p.m. PST. Any applications received to our inbox after 5 p.m. will not be accepted, so please try to send it well before 5 p.m. on the 17th to avoid technical issues preventing your emails clearing any security systems to make it into the inbox by the deadline. Our unit will be monitoring the emails closely and sending a confirmation email. If in the week of October 13th you do not receive one within an hour of you sending it to us, between the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., please reach out to us to check if we received your application. We have a slide with the contact information for all our grant unit members at the end of this presentation for you to contact in that situation. So now let's go over the contents of the application packet itself. You must have an applicant summary letter, MOU or letters of collaboration for law enforcement, prosecutors, and courts, a letter of commitment or an MOU only for applicants proposing to provide services at a location other than their agency. You must obtain a letter of commitment from the partnering agency outlining their understanding of the use of their facility and a commitment to supporting your agency's presence. The Sexual Assault Services Questionnaire. You can see this questionnaire on the Notice of Funding Opportunity, page 24. You must complete this questionnaire in its entirety if and only if you are proposing sexual assault services. For any questions that do not apply to your project, mark them non-applicable or NA. This questionnaire does not count towards the narrative page limits. Attachment G, organization chart. All applicants must submit an org chart. And then the board of directors with contact information and affiliation. This will be for nonprofits only. And finally, the total annual compensation for each of the top 5 executives, again for nonprofits only. Agency self-assessment questionnaire. All applicants must complete and submit the agency self-assessment questionnaire as part of their application packet. Please make sure that you do not leave any of the questions on there unanswered. Indirect costs. When you work on your budget, there is an area for indirect costs. You may use your federally negotiated rate agreement or the 15% de minimis if you do not already have a federally negotiated rate agreement. This can be for the de minimis, it is up to 15%. You can elect to request less than that 15%. And that will be based off of the modified total direct cost, or MTDC, which is based on all direct salary, wages, fringe, supplies, materials, services, travel, and subawards up to the first $25,000 of each subaward. For more information on this, as it is a robust topic that would take its own presentation to get full details on, you can find information in 2 CFR Part 200, Subpart E. There is a link in this presentation for you. Cost allocation table. The cost allocation table provided in the application notice of funding opportunity is a template that is an option. You do not have to use that specific template if you already have one for your agency. This is the exception to having to use all the documents provided by us, and the only exception. So if you already have something that will contain all this information, absolutely use yours. Otherwise, we have kind of created a template that you can modify to use instead. Things to keep in mind when completing the cost allocation table, whether using your own or our template, is to be sure that you show the full picture of where the funding for the program and project is coming from. This gives us an idea of how sustainable the project may be, as well as helps us ensure that there is no supplanting occurring, because as a reminder, grant funds are intended to supplement, not supplant. A few more reminders. Remember to use the forms provided in the Notice of Funding Opportunity packet. Please see page 16 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the application content list. Include the checklist, page 38, in your submitted application packet. Please submit the application packet in the same order as listed in the checklist. After you write your application and compile it into one packet, I advise going through one more time before submitting and making sure to use that application checklist that is provided on page 38 and will now be the last page of your application to ensure that you have included all requested items. Reminder for indicating purpose areas. There are 2 areas in the application packet where you will need to identify which purpose area your agency is addressing. The first area is going to be on the second page of the title pages found within the Notice of Funding Opportunity. The next will be on the scope of work table. Please ensure any purpose areas identified on the title pages are then identified on the scope of work table, and any purpose areas on the scope of work table are identified on the title pages. These should match, and your scope of work and your purpose areas identified should align with the narrative that you provide, as well as the budget. Deadline. As a reminder, the deadline is Friday, October 17th, 2025 by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. No exceptions, not even by 1 minute, will be allowed. please try to submit before that day to ensure there is no technical difficulties or delays that prevent your application from being received by that deadline. You will submit by sending that application packet in its entirety to the email aggrants@ag.nv.gov. And again, you should receive a reply back confirming that we have received your application by one of our staff members. There may be delays in getting that confirmation early in this process, but as I stressed earlier, if it is the week of the deadline and you do not hear from us within an hour, please reach out and contact us to make sure that there isn't an issue with our system or your system with sending and receiving that application. So a quick rundown on the timeline of this overall process. We are releasing on or around Friday 19th or Friday, September 19th, 2025, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. The deadline to submit applications is again Friday, October 17th, 2025 by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The week of November 13th, 2025 is when we will be reviewing those applications with a panel of reviewers with the goal of submitting funding recommendations to our Chief Financial Officer for approval being November 20th, 2025, so that we can send out funding decisions by November 25th, 2025, and then work on issuing the subgrant awards to funded agencies between November 25th to December 27th, 2025, in order to start funding January 1st, 2026. So what are a few of our expectations for those that are funded that you want to be mindful of when applying for these funds? Monthly, we have a requirement of submitting your request for reimbursement or RFRs to our office. That deadline is the 15th of the month following when those charges were made. Because as a reminder, it is in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, this is a cost reimbursable grant. So that process entails spending the money and then submitting a report the following month showing with full receipts, full backup documentation, the expenses billed to the grant so that we can then reimburse you for those expenses. Annually, there is a narrative report that will entail all the data that you need to track throughout the year for services being provided by the grant. That is due January 31st, 2027. And this is the impact report. This will be utilizing an online tool that is created for us by the VAWA May team. There's more information in the Notice of Funding Opportunity about what that report is. Semi-annually, so July 31st, 2026 and January 31st, 2027, there will be a short narrative report that is due. This will mostly entail making sure that any training requirements and activities towards your scope of work are being dealt with. Annually or as needed, we will do on-site monitorings. And then as needed, we expect you to be responsive and communicative with our staff as we send out any sort of emails, phone calls, and stuff from anything we may need from you. Or anything you may need from us. It goes both ways. So, speaking of that communication that goes both ways, here is the contact information for our unit. Our main grants unit email that everyone in our unit has access to is aggrants@ag.nv.gov, which again is where you'll be submitting your application and is a good place to reach out to us with any questions that you may have on this process that we will be able to answer, and any technical issues that might be arising that are impacting your submission. This is it. That's like our bread and butter email. Additionally, though, you can always reach out to John DeCoco, our grants unit manager, at jcdecoco@ag.nv.gov, myself, our VAWA administrator and a grants and projects analyst, Megan Nelson at mnelson@ag.nb.gov, or our other grants and projects analyst, Stephanie Isaac at saisaac@ag.nb.gov. The 2026 Stop SASP Notice of Funding Opportunity and required documents are available on our website at http://ag.nb.gov/grants/website. Yes, grants is there twice. That notice and all of the required attachments you should be able to find if you're watching this video, as this video is embedded right above all these attachments. Additionally, I will ensure that we have a PDF copy of all of these slides for you to be able to access any of the links referenced throughout, as well as we will be putting out a FAQ around October 1st with any questions we receive so that everyone has that same information. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions you have. We are happy to help, and we look forward to reviewing any applications we receive and working with those that are funded. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. And again, just double stressing, triple stressing, please reach out with any questions. And remember that the deadline is October 17th by 5 p.m. Thank you and have a great day.